Hey there! Welcome back to Color and Craft Haven, a little corner of calm where we can slow down, breathe, and add a little color to the day. Today we're diving into something that quietly shapes every coloring page, every folded crane, every handmade card, every little clay charm: color theory. Now, before your brain tries to tell you that this is going to feel like an art class from high school, take a breath. We're not here for grades or rigid rules. We're here to understand how color works, gently, practically, and in a way that makes your crafting feel more intentional and more satisfying. Color theory is simply the study of how colors relate to one another. It helps us understand why some combinations feel peaceful, why others feel dramatic, and why sometimes a project just looks off, even when we can't quite explain why. And the beautiful thing is this: you don't need to memorize a textbook to use it. You only need to understand a few foundational ideas. Let's start with the color wheel. Picture a simple circle of colors. Red, blue, and yellow are the primary colors. They can't be created by mixing other colors together. When you mix them, you get secondary colors: orange, green, and purple. And between those live the tertiary colors, like blue-green or red-orange. For adult colorists, this is incredibly useful. If you're coloring a fantasy forest scene and you want it to feel harmonious, staying within neighboring colors on the wheel, like blues, blue-greens, and greens, will give you a calm, cohesive effect. That's called an analogous color scheme. It feels soft and unified because the colors share common ingredients. Now let's talk about contrast. If you want something to pop, a dragon's eye, a flower in a meadow, a focal word on a handmade card, you'll want complementary colors. These are colors opposite each other on the wheel: blue and orange, red and green, purple and yellow. When placed side by side, they intensify each other. This matters just as much in clay as it does in coloring books. If you're sculpting a tiny mushroom from polymer clay, pairing a red cap with a subtle green leaf behind it creates natural visual tension. The red becomes more vibrant because of the green. Even if you're working in muted tones, the relationship still does the work for you. But color isn't just about which hue you choose. It's also about value, how light or dark something is. Value might actually be more important than the color itself. You can create depth in a coloring page using only one color family by adjusting pressure and layering. A light blue sky fading into a deeper twilight blue creates atmosphere, even though technically it's all just blue. In paper crafts, value becomes crucial when layering cardstock or patterned paper. If all your layers are similar in darkness, the design can feel kind of flat. But if you intentionally place a darker base behind a lighter focal element, suddenly the project feels dimensional and thoughtful. Then there's saturation, how intense or muted a color is. High saturated colors feel energetic and bold. Desaturated colors, sometimes called muted or toned down colors, feel cozy and gentle. For those of us who lean towards slow living and relaxation, we often gravitate toward lower saturation without even realizing it. That's why I use so many muted tones. Think about why dusty rose, sage green, soft lavender, and warm beige feel so comforting. They aren't screaming at the eye. They're softened. You can achieve this in coloring by layering a complementary color lightly over your base tone just to tone it down a little bit. In clay, you can mix a little bit of brown or white to soften intensity. In mixed media, you can glaze over bright paint with a translucent wash just to bring that brightness down a notch. Temperature is another powerful concept. Colors are often described as warm or cool. Reds, oranges, and yellows feel warm, like sunlight, autumn leaves, or candlelight. Blues, greens, and purples feel cool, like water, shadows, and winter air. When you're crafting a piece meant to feel cozy, warm tones often lead the mood. But here's a gentle trick. Adding a small touch of cool color into a warm project creates balance. For example, in a fall-themed card full of oranges and golds, a hint of deep navy or forest green can help anchor the design. For clay artists, temperature can change the personality of a piece. A figurine made in warm creams and peaches feels soft and inviting. The same figurine in cool grays and icy blues feels more mysterious or ethereal. The form hasn't changed, only the color temperature has. Now let's talk about monochromatic schemes. This is where you use one color in multiple values in saturations. Monochromatic work is incredibly soothing. It's perfect for stress relief crafting because it removes decision fatigue. You're not choosing between 12 competing colors. You're exploring depth within one family. Adult colorists often find this technique meditative. Choosing all greens for a botanical page or all purples for a fantasy portrait creates unity and elegance. In paper crafts, monochrome cards can look modern and refined. In clay, a monochromatic sculpture can emphasize texture over color contrast. Speaking of texture, color behaves differently depending on the surface. On smooth marker paper, color looks bold and clean. On textured watercolor paper, pigment catches on raised fibers, creating visual variation. In clay, matte finishes absorb light, while glossy finishes reflect it, changing how color appears. Mixed media artists know this well. A metallic gold acrylic paint looks entirely different brushed over canvas versus layered over black gesso. The base underneath influences the final result. That's why testing swatches is such a helpful practice. Now let's gently touch on emotional storytelling. Color carries emotional weight. Soft blues can feel peaceful. Deep reds can feel dramatic. Earthy browns feel grounded. Bright yellows feel optimistic. When we craft, we're often telling quiet stories without really realizing it. If you're creating a journal spread meant for reflection, muted cool tones may enhance that introspective feeling. If you're folding origami stars to decorate a child's room, brighter hues might communicate playfulness and joy. There's no right or wrong, only intention. For fantasy art lovers in our cozy creative community, color can shape the entire mood of a world. A dragon illustrated in cool silvers and blues feels ancient and icy. The same dragon in warm golds and reds feels fiery and bold. Color theory helps you choose deliberately, rather than accidentally. Another useful concept is the 60-30-10 rule. This is often used in interior design, but it applies beautifully to crafting. 60% of your project is your dominant color. 30% is your secondary color. 10% is your accent. That tiny accent is where complementary contrast can really shine. On a handmade card, that might mean a cream background, a sage green frame, and a tiny gold foil detail. In coloring, it might mean a mostly neutral page with a bright pop in a character's clothing. In clay, perhaps a neutral figurine with a bold flower accent. Let's also talk about light source. When you understand how color interacts with light, your project becomes more dimensional. Shadows are rarely just black. They're often cooler versions of the base color. Highlights are lighter and sometimes warmer. In coloring, instead of shading a red apple with black, try using a deeper red mixed with a touch of purple. For highlights, blend in a lighter, warmer red or even a hint of peach. In clay painting, dry brushing lighter tones over raised textures creates natural highlights. Now here's something freeing. Color theory is a guide, not a prison. Some of the most striking projects break the rules, but understanding the principles allows you to break them intentionally. If you choose high contrast, clashing color schemes for a mixed media piece, for example, you can do so knowing it creates tension. If you limit yourself to one gentle hue for a week of crafting, you understand that you're leaning into harmony and calm. For those of us crafting as a form of mindfulness or art therapy, color awareness becomes a grounding practice. You begin noticing what draws you in. Are you reaching for cool tones today because you feel overstimulated? Are you choosing warm colors because you need comfort? Color becomes less about perfection and more about self-awareness. And perhaps the most comforting truth of all, there's no universally correct palette. There are only relationships between colors and the feelings they evoke. Your version of cozy may lean toward dusty neutrals. Someone else's may lean toward jewel tones. The beauty of understanding color theory as a crafter is that it gives you vocabulary. Instead of saying this looks weird, you can say the values are too similar, or there's not enough contrast. Instead of guessing, you adjust gently and intentionally. Whether you're blending colored pencils on a quiet evening, folding paper cranes at your kitchen table, shaping a tiny clay cottage, or layering scraps into a journal page, color is always working behind the scenes. And when you understand how it works, your creative confidence grows. You don't have to overhaul your process overnight. Start small. Try a complementary accent on your next project. Experiment with monochrome. Pay attention to temperature shifts. Observe how saturation changes the mood. Let color be a part of the slow ritual. Swatch, compare, pause, and adjust. Crafting in this cozy little world of ours isn't about producing masterpieces. It's about creating moments of presence. And color, gentle, vibrant, soft, bold, is one of the most powerful tools we have to shape those moments. The more you practice noticing color relationships, the more intuitive it becomes. Soon you won't just be thinking about the wheel at all. You'll just feel what works. And that truly is where art theory meets creative peace. That's it for today's colorful time. I'd love to know, what colors are you reaching for lately? And why do you think that is? Take care, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one.